Back home again in Indiana for the penultimate round of the eGP Pilot Series. Welcome to the most famous circuit on American soil, home of the Indianapolis 500-mile race. Welcome to Indianapolis Motor Speedway. My name is Taylor Mills, and alongside me is Slidebird Amity Pulsatrix, and we will be live from lights to flag here on ABN. Sadly, what lies ahead for our drivers tonight is not a flat-out blast on the oval, but a needle threading between the lines of a very tight and technical infield. This particular circuit, first built in the 90s to play host to Formula One, has been remodeled twice in that time to the layout that we know today. 14 turns, 9 to the right and 5 to the left, send our drivers into heavy braking zones and through tightening radius corners, whilst judging the usage of curbs just right. Off-tracks are a consideration out there today, with turn 10 being a particular pinch point, so you can very easily pick up an off-track whilst cutting the corner trying to optimize your line. The Indy road course is infamously a tricky mistress of sports cars, with there only being a few viable passing points for the prototypes. Keep your eyes peeled for late dives down into turn 1 and switchbacks in the middle sector as the league class scrabbles for track position and clean air. So with the LMP2 Championship all wrapped up last week in Hockenheim for Luke Smith and Project Valorous, all eyes are going to be on Miguel Almeida and Sonic Racing Team, who lead the GT3 class by only 11 points. Amity, it's been a pretty dreadful run for Miguel Almeida in the last couple of weeks, namely hitting his teammate in Mugello and then just not really getting a handle for the wet weather in Hockenheim. But after such a great performance to start the championship out, what does he need to do now to try and hold on to that lead?
Ultimately, the safest bet is just to win like he was doing earlier in the season. He was dominating the early portions of the season, doing a fantastic job and gathered that lead up, but since then has been kind of faltering, and I'm not exactly sure if this is because of the pressure that he's putting upon himself to try and achieve, to accomplish the goals he's trying to set out, or what it might be, but it just doesn't seem like he's been as consistent as he has been at previous races. He's still been fairly fast, it's just the consistency isn't quite there. So I think the big priority here would be consistency over raw pace, which isn't exactly what we would probably expect from a race as short as this. It's a sprint race, so you know it's kind of like an all-out sprint the whole way through. But still, like, you can't just be running at 100% pace the whole time and expect like a perfectionist type of run. So maybe dialing back that pace just a little bit, just enough to keep the car straight and narrow on the road, might be enough to keep Miguel Almeida on the straight and narrow, ahead of the pack, and bolster some gap in the championship points to the other cars behind.
Well, Miguel will be certainly hoping that raw pace isn't what wins out today. We tend to say don't read into practice times too much as the practice session does come to a close, but he's currently 0.3 of a second off a brand new entry for tonight, actually, of Project Valorous's Henry Brown, who will be taking to the field for the first time tonight. But as we transition into the qualifying session, it is 4 laps in 10 minutes to see who's going to be taking those vital pole positions in class here tonight. It has been a clean sweep of poles for Luke Smith in LMP2, so maybe someone out there can knock him off the top spot tonight. Miguel Almeida will be hoping to regain his position at the top of GT3, but it's going to be a very tricky qualifying session here today. The sun is beating down on the track, 29 Celsius track temps, and it's a circuit that can be quite hard on tires, to say the least. It's a very old track surface here. We don't have the repaved version of the circuit. You can see by that massive curb on the inside of turn 6 there. We are still following Miguel Almeida, but here comes one of the biggest overtaking points on the track and one of the biggest braking zones as well. As we just switch back to looking through the first sector, this is another tricky braking zone as well, to be fair. Jeremy Debova for Vortex. Not an amazing performance for that entire team last week. They'll be hoping to bounce back relatively quickly, but tricky braking zone, turning whilst getting the car slowed down through 3 and 4 before spitting you out over the curbs, down the back straight between turns 6 and 7, and then slamming on the brakes as you get just to that gap in the barrier there, trying to nip that curb on the inside. And then look at these curves through here. They are flat, flat, flat all the way through. It is a tightrope walk to get the racing line right through here. Very much a one-line sort of middle sector, which isn't really the thing that multi-class racing drivers are going to want to see. They want a track where you can take multiple lines through a corner, set cars up in different points, but that's really not what we've got here at Indianapolis. It is a one-line circuit through and through, and we're going to see a lot of trains out there tonight, a lot of draft trains down that start-finish straight, as everyone's just trying to stay with each other, try and fight through that dirty air, find the pace where it is, and it'll be the traffic, I think, where the racing really comes alive tonight, which has so often been the case, Amity.
Yeah, absolutely. Traffic is always a concern in these races, but especially today because, as you mentioned, Indianapolis is basically a one-line circuit, and admittedly some circuits more than others. Indianapolis is quite a wide circuit as well, so it is possible to go 3, even 4 wide, especially on this front stretch right here as they go backwards down the what would be the oval start-finish line. As we see Thomas Burling going through the first sector and starting his flying lap. But as wide as it is, it does get quite narrow in that particular chicane there. That chicane has caused quite a few problems in a lot of different series, as we see some times starting to trickle in. Luke Turnison actually grabbing a 1:15.75, setting the bar for the LMP2 class.
I always forget you're North American. You say the bits after the decimal points as if they're numbers, don't you?
What?
Like 75 rather than 75. I have had countless arguments with people from North America about how you read a decimal point. We're not going to get into that tonight, but lap times are starting to tumble in now. Race 2 for Finn Adders this week, of course, made his debut at the Hockenheimring and then raced in PEC at the weekend as well, and performed really, really well, actually, that team did, to clinch P5 in the team's championship and, of course, take that last actual, not points paying position, but money prize paying position, which was really cool for them to see on that late fuel save strategy. Miguel Almeida has his first lap time in already, is currently on provisional pole position as Liam O'Sullivan, series organizer, sets his second flying lap of the session and goes up to P3, but jumping back to the top of the timing sheets with a 1:15.517 is Luke Turnison. It's a really good lap time around here. GTPs are only a few seconds a lap faster around here as he comes down pit lane to try and get on a fresh set of boots and crack on with the rest of the session. It's an improvement for a 1:16.547 for series debutant Alex Miller for TMR. It's good to see my own team out there on track. I can't even be unbiased about that. I'm liking seeing the blue back on track.
The black and blue out on track. New entry, Alex Miller from Taylor Mills Racing. Yes, the very same Taylor Mills that is currently in the commentary booth. We're not going to show any bias, are we?
No, never. I'm always willing to criticize my teammates when they do something wrong. It's how they get better.
Well, certainly we'll have to see how Alex Miller does here to represent the new entry from Taylor Mills Racing here in the eGP Pilot Series at Indianapolis. Coming out of the road course into the oval, back into the final road course section that takes a chunk out of turn 1, the oval turn 1 rather. And then coming through the final corner.
Change as well, to be fair.
Absolutely. Those the tires really don't like that oval turn 1. It is too fast, too quick, with all this aerodynamic force pushing the car into the ground. And the diamond cutting grooves in the track that they use, it just kills tires. It's not cut in the right direction for travel as well. So those lateral forces and all of that
everything that they've done to this track to make it really, really good for oval racing just makes it so tricky for quote-unquote normal road course racing, as Miguel Almeida improves once again to 23.788, currently 0.3 clear of everyone else in the standing, everyone else in the on the leaderboards at the moment. That brand new Project Valorous entry, currently in second place, that's Henry Brown on board the Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo. Maxime Dumoulin actually backing up a great performance last time out to be in P3 for now, with eyes forward to see what we can do. Oh, and that's a big off down at turn 7 for Maxime Dumoulin. It could just be a cheeky reset to pit lane with just under a third of the session to go, or it could even be session over. Yeah, no, that is going to be session over for Maxime Dumoulin. That is 4 laps completed, with only Dimitri Dennis, Luke Turnerton, and Guillaume Costa-Reese, Alfonso Suto. Those are the only drivers left to complete a lap. So we're not long away from the end of qualifying here. We pretty much expect the standings to stay as they are, as Henry Brown keeping it tight to the inside, traction control, probably rumbling Adam, keeping that rear end under control. Up to the line he comes, across the line he goes. It's a 124.077. So it's not enough to dethrone Miguel Almeida, but it is good enough to hold on to that P2. Trying to see if there are any other drivers out there on track at the moment. Yep, this is Luke Turnerton, currently on provisional pole position in LMP2. I've noticed Luke Smith is in the session, but hasn't gone out there on track, so I think we're witnessing a bit of a last to first challenge here tonight.
We might be. Luke Smith already clinched the championship last week, actually, at Hockenheim, so no pressure to him. He could just kind of glide through the rest of the series up until our last race at Sebring, happening in 2 weeks' time. So maybe making it a little bit more challenging for himself, having a little bit more fun with that last to first challenge, possibly, is Luke Smith in the Project Valorous number 55. It'll be interesting to see how that shakes out, see how he navigates the back of the LMP2 grid, as Luke Turnerton just getting a couple more practice laps in, getting a couple cheeky practice laps in, because I feel like he's already done most of his qualifying laps, and he doesn't really need to improve too much.
He has actually been knocked off pole position by Finn Adders in the closing stages of the session by only 0.03 of a second. So a very tight qualifying here at Indianapolis Road Course in LMP2, especially with Luke Smith sort of off the board for setting a time. So it will be a brand new pole sitter for this race of Finn Adders as we get right to the close of the qualifying session. And just quickly, we did sort of touch on it last week when we spoke to Luke Smith. The next round of this championship is in 2 weeks' time. Now, as anyone who plays iRacing will know, is there is a huge update coming in 6 days' time, including a brand new tire model for the... Oh, goodness gracious me. No, it wasn't session over for Luke Turnerton, who has jumped back to the top of the standings with a 15.479 to take pole position in the dying seconds of the session by 9 thousandths of a second. That is something.
That is incredibly close timing. You could not have cut it much closer than that. As we get ready for the race session, and it's as the drivers start to grid up, let's take a look at what that grid actually looks like.
So here we go then. Let's have a peek at the LMP2 field and see exactly how they're going to line up for tonight's race. Up there on pole position is Luke Turnerton for Unlucky Luke Racing. A mesmerizingly fast pole position lap to take it by only 9 thousandths of a second. Finn Adders repeats the performance of last week, puts that car second on the grid for Project Valorous, with Nelson Clemente putting the Rubis gas by NGC car in P3. Matt Luke for Fury Simsport lines up in 4th, and series organizer Liam Sullivan in 5th for Right Engineering alongside Dimitri Dennis. Renee Thalasinos for Twin Turn Sim Racing X-Ray will line up in P7 alongside series debutant Alex Miller in the number 41 for Taylor Mills Racing. Thomas Berlin lines up behind him for Jib Racing alongside the Eagle Speed Academy car of Killian Kreis. Sebastian Isenberg is strangely out of position down there in 11th alongside the Slippers Racing Team LMP2 of Alex Deiter. And to round out the last row of the grid, 2 cars that didn't set a qualifying lap tonight, Luke Smith in the number 55 Project Valorous car and Falco van Rysselt.
Miguel Almeida once again on pole position, needs to hold on to this to try and extend the gap and make it a little bit safer for the final race at Sebring. Meanwhile, alongside him, Henry Brown, the Canadian in the Lamborghini for Project Valorous in 2nd place. Maxime Dumoulin in 3rd with the McLaren, and alongside him is the Ford Mustang of Guilherme Costa Reis, another debutant within this series. Alonso Sudo in the Ferrari in the number 219 is going to be starting in 5th with Jeremy DeBover in the Vortex Black McLaren, the number 14 alongside. And then finally we have Anthony Quaranta and Philip Spess rounding out the back end of this grid.
So no previous race winner from Hockenheimring in GT3 tonight. Jan Kurbs choosing to take the night off, but a brand new pole sitter in LMP2 will follow the Porsche Cup car through the final sector, still with the Project Valorous car on the front row, just not the one we're used to. The field of Gibson V8 revving up as they push the cars through the final sector around the start to the start finish line for what is going to be 90 frantic minutes of multi-class racing. Series champion Luke Smith will be starting way down the field in 13th in LMP2. You can just about make his car out at the back of that line on the right-hand side as Luke Turnison leads the field through the second to last corner. The Porsche 911 race car pace car is going to pull off into the pit lane, and the field will be controlled by unlucky Luke Racing. Drivers just taking an extra second to get those tires nice and warm as they roll through what in race trim will be a flat out, very tricky turn 14. Into the starting zone they go, 2 by 2, throttle down, green flag in the air. Luke Turnison leads the field away. And shuffling position already in the background. That's going to be Finn Adders having to dive to either side of the track. And there's contact already. That's the Rubis Gaspar NGC car almost making contact with Luke Turnison. We'll have to get a replay of that to see exactly what happened. But I think the GT3s are about to make their way around to the start-finish line now to get their race underway. They are in fact underway. Miguel Almeida does lead them down into turn 1. It's 2 by 2 in the background for Maxime Dumoulin and Henry Brown. Maxime Dumoulin looking to make up a position into 1, has the advantageous inside line, feeds it round into the outside and back to the inside for turn 3, and moves up as one of the Vortex cars also moves up. That is Jeremy DeBover, actually the only Vortex car on the grid, as Anthony Quaranta holds on to that last place.
I do apologize right now. The timing screen is a little bit screwed up. It should be Miguel Almeida's Sonic Racing team in first. Should fix itself once we get across the timing line once again. But for now, Miguel Almeida holding on to this first position, and again, just needs to dial back the pace just a little bit. You can see the gap already forming, just needs to be consistent in order to get another win and try and build some kind of buffer in the championship standings for the GT3 class, as we've seen quite a few incidents actually accumulate through the GT field. So we'll take a look at some of these that have occurred. This is the start of the race with Nelson Clemente.
I'm just trying to figure out who that is behind him that made contact. I think it might have been, was it Matthew J. Luke? I think it might have been Matthew Luke. So if I can wind it back on my own and get a proper good look at that. Yeah, I think it was Matthew J. Luke, who is currently having a bit of a scrap, or had a bit of a scrap with Liam O'Sullivan on the last lap, as that is going to be the Fuel Vine Racing car of Dimitri Dennis. Go for a little half spin, I think assisted down into turn 10 there. as we switch back to live pictures of Miguel Almeida still at the front of the GT3 field, doing exactly what he needs to do to maintain that championship lead. And what a fantastic job he's doing in the dry conditions here at the Indy Road Course. Luke Turnison had started to pull away from Finn Adders just a little bit, but in the last lap or so, Adders has managed to pull that gap back down to within half a second, and will be getting every little bit of slipstream he needs as Luke Smith is looking to pull off a move on series debutant Alexander Miller down into turn one. Pulls slowly to the inside. It's going to be blue versus pink and white into turn one. Side by side on the brake. Smith on that inside line takes the apex from the 41 car of Miller and moves up into P6 after just 2 laps.
Just furious pace from Luke Smith. What an incredible display of talent from this driver. Project Valorous is a fantastic driver in the number 55 car. Literally like 5 positions now, I believe. It's hard to say. I'm not going to be able to figure out exactly how many positions everybody's gained because, like I mentioned, the timing screen on my end is kind of screwed up. But, oh, actually, it should be displayed correctly. 7 positions gained. That sounds about right.
Oh, that is 2 cars falling off the field down at turn 7. Alex Miller and Sebastian Nissenberg backwards into the second proper overtaking spot on the circuit. Hopefully we'll be able to get a replay of that and see exactly what happened. So we just join with Miller already sideways in the grass. I'm just going to send it back a little bit more to see what happened. Hard on the brakes, and Isenberg just misses his braking point completely, slams into the rear end of Miller and sends him for that half spin off into the grass. There's not even anything for me to be biased about there. It literally just looked like Sebastian missed his braking point. Oh yeah.
Oh, a hard knock.
That is the last thing the twin turn sim racing driver wanted there. He was looking to try and make up position, so now it's going to be him and Miller right down at the back of the field. He dutifully waits for the TMR driver to rejoin the circuit before resuming racing, but these two are now 6 seconds off the back of the field, so as everyone gets to continue their scraps, they've got a bit of a recovery drive ahead of them as we're just rejoining Smith, having just overtaken Rene Thalasinos in the last lap or two. He's now right under the rear wing of Liam O'Sullivan. He's going to have to be very careful about how he pulls this move off, because when these drivers do make their stewards reports, guess who it goes to? That's right, it is the driver of the 63 just in front of Smith. So no contact, no diving, no anything. This one needs to be nice and clean, otherwise he might see an in-race penalty coming his way. He probably won't, but you know, you got to hype that up a little bit. 3:14 they both come then. Still Smith in the slipstream of that Dallara P217 in front. This is the way we've seen him make those moves as Vaco Van Rysel is off down at turn 12. I think that was a little bit of contact. See if we get a replay.
Yeah, multiple cars off, so this is probably some contact. This is down into the final sector, heading into the portion of the track. Yep, a little bit of a nudge from the back end. Yet another moment of missing the braking point, as we saw a little bit of a server hiccup there by everybody blinking, but hopefully that's not a continuous issue.
Yeah, that was a very strange incident, I think. It looks like the Slippers racing team car of, I think, Alex Dieter checked up, either lost control of the car down there at the apex, or tried to check up for a slightly different line. I'm going to get another angle of that for myself, just to try and... Yeah, no, locks up the rear, I think, just on entry, and that's what did it. A little bit of extra... Oh, it's so hard to tell exactly what happened. In fact, no. That's even harder to judge from that angle.
Just seems a bit late or light on the brakes, perhaps. Might be the situation.
It does look like he's late to the apex, doesn't he?
So, just a little bit too fast entering the corner, and unfortunately ran out of room before meeting the rear end of the other LMP2 cars. We take a look at Liam O'Sullivan, who has now been passed by the number 55 Valorous car. That last first challenge working out incredibly well. We're not even 10 minutes into this hour and 30-minute long race, and he's still like climbing the ranks. In fact, starting to battle for a podium position against Matthew Luke of Fury Simsport.
Well, we've seen many times how in other series cars starting down the order start to have a trickier time once they get towards the tail end of the podium. Matthew Luke already showing a little bit more pace than everyone else in the field, as Smith just has to wait behind that other LMP2 for now and wait for an opportunity down into turn one. One big thing that I've noticed that Smith has been doing that the rest of the field isn't, he's using all the track on the exit of turn 4. Turn 5 isn't a really sharp corner. You can literally just have a little flick to the right to open that up and still go flat through the apex of both of those chicanes, and Smith really taking advantage of that to maximize his run through 4, as on that inside line a much shorter run through the final corner. Look at the speed build in the slipstream though. To the inside he goes. It's going to be side by side before they even get on the brakes. Smith to the inside of Matthew Luke. He makes that move look so easy. Doesn't even outbrake himself and takes P3 after 8 minutes and 6 seconds of racing.
What incredible pace from Luke Smith. This is a masterclass, not only in it, ooh, taking quite a lot of that curve actually, but still making it stick. Just, there's so much speed in that 55 from Luke Smith, and this kind of demonstrates exactly why he's clinched the championship so early on in the season with 2 races to go. Clinching it last week at Hockenheim. He's just the best driver on the track, bar none. Discussion not needed. This is the proof that shows beyond a shadow of a doubt that Luke Smith is the one who deserved this championship for the LMP2 cars.
Considering he hasn't really had the chance to race many people out there on track today, I'm sure he's appreciative of the opportunity to do so. It may get a little bit trickier for him now as he gets towards the top 2 positions in LMP2, separated by only 0.7 of a second, as they do reach the tail end of quite a short LMP2 field, but they're all still quite close together, separated by only a couple of corners, as Luke Tennyson is now right on the back of them. As, in fact, no, that's not quite right yet. I still got a few seconds before he gets... no, sorry. Misreading that one again. Luke Tennyson is with them and inside the GT3 traffic right now. It's going to be Philip Specs in that Writer Engineering Mustang just in front of him as they come through the section of track where you just cannot overtake GT3s.
Yeah, this part of the track gets very narrow very quickly. Very dangerous to try and make passes on slower cars here. Dangerous to make passes here in general, but especially with the slower classes.
This could be something with how Tennyson has been a little bit checked up into 10. Adders has had a lot of momentum out of that middle sector, looking for a way around the outside. Both cars are going to get checked up in 2 different ways. Tennyson almost into the back of Afonso Suto. Adders squeezes his way around the outside as well, and Tennyson dives to the inside to try and take away that slipstream. But that Project Valorous car is still there. Are they going to make it 3 wide down into turn 1? Adders to the outside, Tennyson to the inside. Adders thinks better of it, looking for other opportunities slightly further up the road. Henry Brandon, that Lamborghini, getting a little bit in the way between turns 2 and 3. Adders to the inside, and it's 3 into turn 4. Adders can't carry the speed on the inside of the corner as Tennyson holds on to that lead.
Absolutely ludicrous aggression from Thin Adders going 3 wide. And again, the track is wide enough to accommodate. You saw there was more than enough space between the cars, but still 3 wide is a very, very sketchy proposition to make. So you can see exactly how aggressive Luke Tennyson and Finn Adders are being to try and claim this top spot, with Luke Smith now chasing them down. You can see him in the background now. This dude's quick.
Yeah, and with all that scrapping, it has allowed the 55 car to get right on the back of these two turners and forcing the issue down into 13. Adders setting up for the run out of the corner, but gets just a little bit checked up into the final corner of the track and opens that gap up to Tennyson just a little bit more.
Wow.
But maximizing the run out of the corner. Here comes the 55 car of Luke Smith. It shouldn't be too difficult for him to get past his teammate, but depends how hard he wants to fight Finn Adders on this one. Tennyson will lead into 1 yet again, but the fight that we're going to be keeping an eye on right now is between the 2 sister cars of Project Valorous. Are there any team orders at play this late in the season? On board then with Smith coming through 3, into 5, over the curb at 6. These cars can handle it. You can use that curb, nice flat curb painted to the outside of that golf cart track. Smith having a peek to the inside, just on the way down to 7, but not actually going for anything as the fight for first has just closed up a little bit yet again.
This is probably the closest battle we've seen so far for the LMP2s. Luke Smith, through the earlier portions of this season, just running away with it. So now he's just getting to play with his food, essentially. And now gets to follow some cars for once. Luke Turnison leading this little pack here, trying to run away. And it seems like it's working a little bit of a gap forming between Luke Turnison in the lead and Finn Atters and Luke Smith in the sister cars, the Project Valorous number 55 and the 5. 5 leading the 55, of course, as they head into turn 1 and now 2. Finn Atters taking a little bit of a chunk of the curb on turn 2. That's a bit of an interesting choice. I'm not sure if that was necessarily a choice, but he's done it twice now. And I do have to wonder, losing contact with the ground with those tires, is that really worth the amount of track you're using in these cars?
Oh yeah, 100%. These things are hugely momentum-based prototypes. Not a lot of power coming to the rear axle of this car, but then again, not a lot of weight as well. So anything you can do to keep that speed up and not have to use fuel and get the power down to get back up to that speed, it just saves you so much time over the course of the lap. But we're just having a gander now at the rest of the LMP2 field, who just about managed to filter their way out of the GT3 traffic. Sebastian Isenberg still trying to hunt down Alex Miller through that on the exit of that middle sector, but just onto the start finish straight now come the 2 Project Valorous cars, as Isenberg off at oval turn 2. That's an unusual one, but Finn Atters breaking the draft to the inside of the circuit. Smith isn't going to go for the move into turn 1, but closes up massively under braking, as these 3 are absolutely inseparable right now.
Yeah, it seems like Luke Smith might be kind of putting the brakes on any attack. Not sure if it's necessarily a team orders thing as much as it just, you go fight, I don't have to kind of situation, but it could also be a team orders thing. It could also be a situation where Finn Atters is actually trying to help Luke Smith with fuel mileage. Of course, 3 cars in a slipstream would mean the last car in that train would have probably the best fuel mileage out of the 3 of them. So this could be a bit of an advantage for the 2 Project Valorous cars and help them both with mileage, but Luke Turnison is still turning up the heat a little bit and leaving quite a bit of a gap between the 2 cars comparatively, with Finn Atters and Luke Smith under a blanket, while Luke is still about half a second to 3/4 of a second ahead, about 4 car lengths or so.
Just something to think about in terms of strategy here at Indy. That is a 60-kilometer-an-hour pit lane. And look how long it is. We are flat out on the racetrack, going so much faster than you would be in the pit lane. Fuel mileage is priority here. Big lifts, big coast. Make sure you make it to that 45-minute mark so that you don't have to worry about coming down the pit lane more than once. Tire wear can be quite high, but as long as you keep it managed. Although into that middle sector, Smith to the inside of turn 4 is going to squeeze past Finn Atters, who has to check up on the exit of the corner, but feeds himself back into the slipstream of his championship-winning teammate. Is going to look to the inside of turn 7. Smith has been really good on the brakes so far here tonight, and that case does continue. Smith then will move up into P2. It's Atters down to 3rd, and in a lap or so, it's going to be Turnison versus Smith for the lead.
Just give it a little extra time, and Luke Smith is going to be gunning for it. And you know he's got the talent to make it happen. Let's take a look at the pass that he made on Finn Atters. A little bit of a dive there. Had to adjust from Finn Atters, and then gets it done before the chicane. That's kind of the ideal scenario. You don't want to be side by side in that chicane. It loses a lot of time, and you can see the gap between the 2 cars when that pass was made. Already lost a lot of time. But then you take a look on the start-finish straight, barely even half a lap, and they already are catching up.
Yeah, Turnerton, who's held on to this lead for 17 minutes of this 90-minute race. Now starting to feel the pressure a little bit as that 55 car starts to sneak up behind him, already gaining a tenth or so in that first sector. But just to think about that overtake into turn 4 again, you really do have to open up that corner to get a good run, as a little bit of traffic is going to get in the way here. So it does present an opportunity to get down the inside of someone, whether that's on a bit of traffic or on another prototype. And Smith just took advantage of it, being right under the rear wing of Finn Adders to get on the brakes nice and late. But fortunately for Adders, he now gets to follow Smith and figure out his lines as it's a big snap of oversteer through turn 10. Adders just about manages to hold on to it and continue, but does lose a little bit of time as he inches closer and closer to, actually, he is outside that slipstream range.
Finn Adders taking a little bit of a moment to audition for Formula Drift. Well held. As he heads onto the start-finish straight, and certainly well outside the drafting, not the drifting, the drafting. He's done both now, but outside the drafting range. With Luke Smith now right hot on the tail of Luke Turnison in the unlucky Luke car. The number 396 and the number 55 doing battle here at Indianapolis, with the 55 now having gained 11 positions, and we haven't even reached 20 minutes into this race.
Yeah, wonderfully healthy LMP2 field out there today. 14 cars, which you absolutely love to see. Prototypes are my absolute favorite class of car to see going racing anywhere. Really fun here at IndyGP. I'm thankful to say that this is a track that I've won at myself on a few occasions here in iRacing. And each one was just as good as the last. As much as it's a difficult track for multi-class, it is very rewarding when you get it right. Ooh, that's a bit of a mistake for Tennyson, though. Down into turn 12, very deep into that corner. It's going to compromise his run all the way through the next section, and I don't think Smith needs any more invitation to that as he sticks in the draft of that blue car in front of him. Watch that dashboard as the speed builds and builds and builds. The revs get higher and higher and higher. To the inside goes Smith. It's going to be a very easy outbraking maneuver into turn 1. It's taken him 19 and a half minutes, 15 completed laps from 13th on the grid. Luke Smith, eGP Pilot Series champion, takes the lead with over an hour and 10 minutes to go.
He makes this look so easy. Last to first in 20 minutes in a Platinum Endurance Championship event. Granted, it is a sprint race as opposed to the actual PEC event. This is just the eGP Pilot Series, but still, given that, everybody is flying at their absolute fastest because it's only 90 minutes of racing, and Luke Smith just gaps the field and keeps going. This is nuts.
So eyes down the field a little bit then, down in P8 in LMP2. We do have a little bit of a fight threatening to get going down here. Killian Clays has been less than a second behind Nelson Clemente for the majority of this race so far, with Alex Miller very much in touch there as well. Dimitri Dennis not far behind either. This is a fight for position covered by only a couple of seconds or so. Dimitri Dennis only 2.5 seconds back on Killian Clay. So once these guys start scrapping, anyone could get involved in this fight. But we talked about it before with that fuel saving as well. You want to make it past 45 minutes if you only want to take the one trip down pit lane. And it could be why we're seeing such a, I want to say, relaxed field out there. We're seeing nothing too silly. The driving is relatively measured, nothing too aggressive out there at the moment, as it feels like everyone's sort of waiting for that second half of the race to make anything happen.
Meanwhile, we're going to take a look at a little bit of an incident that happened a little bit earlier. This is Guillermo Costa race, number 11 replica racing car. And actually, he's just kind of stopped and parked it seems. Kind of had enough fidgeting around in last place and decides to throw in the towel.
There's one thing I forgot to mention about IndyGP is that it's very, it's not a controversial circuit, that's not the correct word for it, but I wouldn't say it's very well liked within the community, to say the least. I think down there is one of the lowest participation at racetracks. I think it's been fortunate enough in the last couple of years or so that it's been the first race of an IMSA season, so everyone's jumped on for that first week, and actually participation in those weeks has been quite fun. So this fight for position continues to get just a little bit closer and a little bit closer as the laps tick down. 1:17.993 for Nelson Commentator last lap, compared to 1:17.923 for the Eagle Speed Academy esports driver of Killian Claes. So absolutely nothing to be shown between these two at the moment as they try to pull away from Miller and Dennis behind Isenberg, now way off the back after that mistake earlier on in this race. That gap now dropping to 3, or growing even to 0.4 of a second as they come through the middle sector. Killian Claes fighting all of that dirty air through the chicanes of 8 and 9, trying to set up as good as he can for turn 10. Clemente taking advantage of all that clean air, all that downforce on the front of his car, but a huge braking zone for Claes to close right up to Nelson Clemente. I think he missed his braking zone just a little bit and overshot the corner. So that gap even stays stable at half a second and brings Miller back into that slipstream range once again.
Just barely tickling that slipstream there is Alex Miller. Barely getting enough of it not to lose the cars ahead. Goes through turn 2 and then now through turn 3 and 4. Long right-hander, got to be very patient on this one. Don't want to hit the gas too early and run wide. Going through the chicanes, go as fast as you dare, cut as much as you dare. And then that's just the first sector. This track, very demanding. Only one line, as we mentioned earlier, through the course. That's certainly not one of them. Going a little bit wide and now going to be losing time to the cars ahead.
Yeah, I think Miller just overdriving a little bit, missed the apex down there at turn 4 and compensating a little bit. That's Philip Spez off at the side of the road on the way into turn 10 without a rear wing. So was that the result of... No, you know what? This came from something else. I'm just winding things back to try and find out exactly when that happened. I think I have actually found it. So here's a replay of what happened. Car just gets loose on him through turn 9 and there's absolutely nothing he can do about it. But actually looking at where the incident occurred that cost him his rear wing, I don't know if we can go back that far, back on the way onto that. Oh, never mind. Matthew Luke is off at the side of the road as well on the entrance to turn 2. So I think maybe losing the back end into 1 and then suffering for it, but around the outside of Coronta, he goes very much squeezing the Audi driver to the inside of 4. But yeah, for Philip Spez, had a little bit of a touch with... we'll go to that once we've had a look at the replay here of Matthew Luke's mistake. Just getting loose before the apex of turn 1 and then the curb down there, not exactly helping him as he has to try and find reverse and back that car off the circuit before getting back into forward gear and getting moving again. But yeah, for Philip Spez, just a little bit of contact with Finn Adders at turn 14. That's why we've seen that gap extend at the front of the field. Backs into the safer barrier on the outside of the circuit, loses his rear wing, and then from that point, there's just a bit of a passenger for the rest of the lap.
Unfortunately, I don't have that incident listed on my incident report, so we can't go back and take a look at it on the broadcast, but there you go. There's that update for why that rear wing was missing.
Here comes a little bit more... oh, no, it's going to be another error. Falco van Rijssel off there at 7. I think probably going to be a very similar incident to what happened to Matthew Luke, but just a quick update on that fight that we've been monitoring for P8 in LMP2. Killian Claes did just have an opportunity to get down the inside of Nelson Clemente, but chose not to go for it. So maybe some fuel games being played by the driver of the ATA LMP2 there, as he's using Clemente as a bit of a, not a pick, but certainly something that's pushing the air out of the way for him so he can use just a little bit less fuel and spend a lot less time down on pit lane.
essentially using the number 42 like a battering ram against the air to
That's
try and
the word I
reduce
was
the
looking for.
reduce the drag on the air around him. So the 42 actually punching a hole through the air that allows the Killian Clace's number 88 to just slip on by in that little pocket, and less drag means more speed and less resistance, which means less power to try and achieve that speed. So that's how that fuel mileage kind of works out if you're not aware. As now they're going to have to deal with some slower traffic and Jeremy DeBover.
Yeah, which way is Commentator going to choose? To the inside. He goes on the exit off the corner. Clace just, again, staying in that position. He's going to have an opportunity to go past again. Is he actually going to go for it this time? No, he's really not. Big lift down into turn one as they close up under braking yet again, teasing us that we're going to see an actual little bit of racing down here in the middle of LMP2. I get the strategy games and I love the strategy games, but I just want to see a bit of racing, guys. Come on, start trying to outbrake each other. Where's the race in this race?
And very smart plays from the drivers ahead of Alex Miller and Dimitri Dennis. This battle currently for 8th. Number 42 leading these 4 cars. A bit of a gap between the first 2 and the last 2 in it. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the GT3 grid, that LMP2 group coming up across a battle for position. This is Henry Brown and Alfonso Sudo battling for 3rd in class.
Yeah, it's Italy versus Italy for P3 in class. That final podium spot as series debutant Henry Brown leads Alfonso Suto, of course, one of the Sonic Racing team drivers.
Debutant? Henry Brown's been here.
Has he?
Yeah, he was at Mosport for sure. I was rooting for him, I know.
Canadian, right?
Yeah.
Right, there we go.
It was his home track.
Series debutant. Ooh, big dive down the inside into 4 for Killian Clace. He's trying to maintain and stay on the back of Nelson Clemente there.
Because Henry Brown was previously driving a Ford Mustang and then switched over to the Lamborghini, I believe. Or was it the Audi?
Right. No.
He switched to the Lamb. Yeah, Young Curbs was the one who. Oh no!
He breaks himself into 7.
Oh
pulls
no!
To the right and goes into the safer barrier to hit the tire barriers to avoid hitting any of the prototypes there. Now, was it a missed braking point or was he assisted off the road there? Let's have a look at the replay and see if we can figure out exactly what happened there. Alex Miller pulls across, and I think maybe just a little bit distracted by the LMP2 in front and the car behind 4th position. Misses his braking point, pulls the car off the road, and absolutely nails the tire barrier. There's that bright blue TMR car in front, and Dimitri Dennis inside as he just avoids clipping the right rear fender of that Dallara P217. Very much a self-sacrifice to save someone else's race there.
Yeah, just a little bit spooked possibly by the LMP2 making a... I wouldn't necessarily say it's a late move, like late as in like inconsiderate, but fairly close to the braking zone for the Lamborghini. Might have been distracted by that. And thankfully taking evasive action to avoid any further damage to other vehicles, but certainly resulting in a less than ideal situation. And now Henry Brown retiring. I was just glazing you, dude. I was just celebrating your presence in the series as the sole Canadian in the field. But unfortunately, luck not going the way of the Canadians this time around. But certainly going in the way of Luke Smith and Project Valorous. The number 55 last to first and now has a gap of 5.5 seconds. We're not even halfway. We're 15 minutes away from halfway. And he's already built this much of a gap. This is the type of dominance that Luke Smith has been able to achieve this series. And it's been completely unmatched.
First round of pit stops well underway in LMP2 then. It's an extended stop for Finn Adders, who's already been on pit lane for 1 minute and 40 odd seconds, about to exit at 1 minute and 50. So a bit of damage picked up in that incident with the Mustang of Philip Spess. So it's going to put the driver who was fighting for position, as we see 2 cars fighting for position, way down the order, as he's going to be off strategy and very out of place in the dirty air, having to really fight to regain anything from this race now after a brilliant result out there in Hockenheim, bringing that car home in P2.
Meanwhile, Nelson Clemente able to extend a tremendous gap between the three behind him. So Killian Claes now leading the charge in 8th in this 3-car group, with Finn Atters a lap behind as a result of that pit stop. Dimitri Dennis and Alex Miller following Killian Claes, but a little bit of a gap between Claes and Dennis as Alex Miller starts to try and chase down P9.
Yeah, it's a loss of position for that number 41 car who was overtaken, who we saw get overtaken down into turn 1 as we were following Finn Atters off pit lane, who's now a lap down on these guys, I might add. So these folks won't particularly want him to get by at any point, despite the fact Atters might be the faster car out of these three at this stage in the race. We'll have to see how aggressive Atters chooses to be with the car at the tail end of that group. Dimitri Dennis just starting to close down a little bit on Killian Claes, but still has Miller for company in that first sector. Both cars just not quite getting the car all the way down to the inside. A bit of a wiggle on the exit of the corner for Dimitri Dennis. Is going to compromise his run all the way down the straight, as Miller, deep in that slipstream, doesn't choose to go for anything and instead has a big lift down into turn 7. So now Miller using the car in front as a battering ram to try and save a little bit of fuel and make sure he can pull off that 45-minute halfway split strategy. But it is leaving him very under pressure from Finn Atters, who is pulling to the inside as they get back onto the oval. Miller probably won't fight that too hard, but in fact actually has. Atters has backed out and Miller holds on to that track position and doesn't have to get separated from the car that he's using for a little bit of fuel saving, as down pit lane comes Dimitri Dennis, a car that has been ailing from damage since very early on in this race, is finally going to get it repaired.
So Alex Miller and Killian Claes trying to battle for 8th as Finn Atters passing Alex Miller, not for position. Finn Atters, as we mentioned, a lap down. And that really demonstrates just how slow this pit lane is here at Indy. We mentioned earlier, I think it was a 60 kilometer an hour or like a 40-ish, 45-ish mile an hour pit lane speed limit. Very, very slow indeed. And it brought Finn Atters a lap down through his pit stop. But you can see the difference that's made on track is the 41 of Alex Miller and the 88 of Killian Claes. Some lap time comparisons. Finn Atters' last lap was a 16.47, or sorry, that was best lap. Their last lap for Finn Atters is an 18.46, and Alex Miller a 17.77, and Killian Claes had the 17.77, and Alex Miller with the 18.18.
Did you do your Spotify rap today?
No, I don't even subscribe to. I use Winamp.
Okay, that's fair. I'm valid.
Yeah.
If
I was going to subscribe to any streaming app, it would probably be Tidal, just because they pay their artists better, and as a musician, I appreciate that quite a lot. That's
fair. I agree with that. I think I tried Tidal for a little bit, but I found that the jump in audio quality just wasn't really worth it, because there wasn't a jump in audio quality for me, because nothing that I could play Tidal from actually had a high enough quality speaker to play the lossless audio, which was it's a bit of a shame, to be fair, because
that's the advantage.
It's the thing that took me over.
That's the advantage that I have with my audio interface, because I use an XLR microphone, one of those fancy little ones. So as a result, I have to have an audio interface, and that means I can crank the bitrate on my computer quite high. I know this is a bunch of nerdy stuff that I'm saying, but basically you can hear the music as if you're in the room with them when you crank the bitrate as high as you can, and then listen to some of the masters for the tracks. that are available on Tidal. Like, this is not a sponsored ad, by the way. Not sponsored at all. I just really appreciate the service.
Other music streaming services are available. These are just the ones that we choose to use.
Yeah. Well, I would be using Tidal if I could afford it, but again, I use Winamp, so.
I think for me it was the same price as Spotify per month.
Oh, really?
11, 12 pound a month. So it's like only a price difference of like £1 or something, which isn't bad.
Huh, I might have to look into
that between US and British currency. It was about $1.20 more expensive a month, which, you know, adds up to £12 a year. Ooh, there's Alex Miller, big snap at the rear in the background there. But just the Spotify Wrapped. Muse were my top artist for the 4th year in a row. I mean, Muse have been my top artist on anything I've been listening to music on for the last 10 years or so at this point.
If I had to hazard a guess from what mine would have looked like if I still subscribed to it, it would a little bit of a slide from Renee Thalasinos.
I was going to say, are we starting to marry our drivers here? Are we giving them ship names at the second to last round of the championship?
This isn't what happened. My brain is just junk. I'm not but as I was saying though, like with regards to the Spotify Wrapped though, like I feel like if I had one, it'd probably be a kind of like a two-way split, like a two-way tie between JPEG Mafia and Jamie Page, probably, which is like two completely opposite ends of the musical spectrum, I would say.
Which is completely fair. That's how music tastes work. You're allowed to, you know, have things be wildly far apart. But let me just, for the last thing we'll mention about this, because this is obviously like the big social media thing of the day. Top artists in order: Muse, Taylor Swift, Panic at the Disco, Arctic Monkeys, and Green Day. 41,184 minutes listened. Top songs: Style, Taylor's version; Toxicity, all these things that I've done by The Killers; Shake It Off, Taylor's version; and Somebody Told Me.
That is an incredible mixture of songs.
Yeah, I'm really upset that Chihiro didn't make it into the top 5 because I've been obsessed with that song in the last month or so. Anyway, here comes a replay for you of the race that's actually happening in front of us. Anthony Carranza just being looked for a way around by the Fury Sim Sport car of Matthew Luke, and Luke just misjudging it quite dramatically at that second apex at turn 9, runs into the back of the Audi R8, and Carranza now on a bit of a late race recovery drive at this point, as the last car still running in GT3. Do you remember what I said, that this track was really difficult for multi-class racing? There's one example of it.
Yeah, Anthony Carranza not having the most ideal season this year in eGP Pilot Series. Just having nothing but issues. Having an issue at Mosport, which is the first race that I did broadcast and commentary for this series. Once again, had more issues the next week, or the next event. I believe last event had a bit of a better turnaround in terms of results, but this time around, once again, that bad luck has returned for the Pandemonium Esports team. Meanwhile, towards the front, Miguel Almeida in the Sonic Racing Team number 18 McLaren. 9 seconds clear of second place. Still got a ways to go before the GTs start having their pit stops. And Miguel Almeida could have the opportunity to, as I mentioned before, buffering that gap between the others in the championship points if he just keeps it straight and narrow. Excuse me, he's already got the pace. We know he's probably the fastest on the track, usually. So all he needs is consistency. Just dial it back just a little bit, and keep the car safe, bring it home in first.
Yeah, but here's the thing as well, is that he's still got another couple of runs, another few runs of LMP2 traffic to come at him, which is when it gets a little bit dicey out there. We've already seen it a couple of times today with Phillips Best losing his rear wing as LMP2 traffic came through, and Carranza getting turned around down at turn 8. It could easily happen again, but here's Clemente. I think down the inside. No, actually, being overtaken by Binadas, and then Clemente just gets it a little bit wrong at the apex. Around in a circle he goes, and that's why he's so far down the order, as he just rejoins right in front of Alex Miller as Thomas Burling comes down pit lane for the first time, a little bit early to make it to that halfway point, and it's going to be a few freebies for the cars behind him on track.
Dropping down the order in this very slow, very long pit lane as we see some cars making their way by. But Nelson Clemente was leading that pack, as we mentioned earlier. Now dropping down to 8th with Killian Clace and Alex Miller taking the reins of 6th and 7th position, actually, respectively. Meanwhile, series organizer Liam O'Sullivan in the Ryder Engineering Esports LMP2 car, the number 63, currently in 3rd place on the podium.
Yeah, it's a great place to be for his debut race in the Platinum eGP Pilot Series, just keeping it between the white lines, which is exactly what he's needed to do at the moment. He's getting the strategy right as well, making it to just about halfway as Twin Turn Sim Racing and Fury Sim Sport both come down pit lane. So those two a little bit early if they want to make it to the end of this race on just the one stop, but both cars. Oh, as Alex Miller comes down pit lane as well. So here are 3 cars that are definitely going to have to make an extra stop, just misjudging that fuel burn and that strategy. And again, it's going to really limit where these guys are going to be able to finish today, as Tennyson and O'Sullivan and Clays are still out there on track. It's actually Luke Smith's come down pit lane too. What is with all these really early pit stops? I'm not sure how I feel about this. It's making me uncomfortable. I
think there might be a bit more fuel capacity in these cars than you're feeling, because I do know. Well, no, there would be more, because if that is the case, then they're capable of pulling in early and then making it the rest of the race. That's what I would assume, at least. So chances are the idea was they would short fuel for the first stint of the race and then just fill her right back up for the rest of the race, because some series do limit fuel capacity on cars compared to what they usually run for 24-hour races. And I don't think eGP Pilot Series is...
we don't know. It's 100% capacity in both cars.
Oh, interesting. So LMP2 cars only go for about 45 minutes?
It's one of them that depends on the track, as that's Alfonso Souza off on the inside of turn 11. Typically here it will be about 45 minutes. Should be 45 minutes on the tank, as these cars do exit the pit lane with 45 minutes to go. Oh, Smith very close to what could have been an illegal pit exit there. I'm just going to wind that back to...
And as you mentioned that, Luke Tunison on our screen actually might have had an unsafe entry, going a little bit too fast into the break off, where you can break off from the racetrack onto pit lane, and just overextended a little bit, braking too late and grabbing some grass, but hopefully it's not.
It looks pretty safe. I'm not seeing anything on the race director there, as Liam O'Sullivan is going to do the biggest fuel save of the entire race. We'll go at least one more lap compared to the rest of the field. Killian Claes was able to go a little bit longer than everyone else he was fighting. The question is, how has that affected where he comes out on track? Finn Adders will, with an extended stop earlier on, will cycle out in front of Claes, as he's got 4.2 seconds on Miller, who's got another 4 seconds on Nelson Clemente behind. So all those fights we were watching are actually starting to get more and more spread out as the race goes on. Turners and men down off those jacks. It will be a tyre change and a full tank of fuel for Unlucky Luke Racing. As keep an eye on the background there, because Liam O'Sullivan may be due down pit lane very soon. Luke Tennyson rejoins the track. Liam O'Sullivan leaves it. And with 47 minutes on the clock, Liam O'Sullivan will be our last visitor to pit lane in LMP2. A tremendous stint length from the driver in the number 63 Writer Engineering Esports car there. So here comes Luke Smith, and we're going to see how far behind Smith Liam O'Sullivan's going to be.
So Liam O'Sullivan still trying to make it to the pit box. You can see just how slow this is in comparison. Luke Smith is ripping into the final corner, and Liam O'Sullivan still has yet to make it to the pit box. Now finally gets into the pit box. The car's raised, getting some new tires as Luke Smith comes onto the start-finish. You'll be able to see just shortly here on the left side, now making the pass. So Luke Smith once again inherits the lead. Heading into turn one. Meanwhile, Liam O'Sullivan still on the jacks.
I think I could make an espresso martini in less time than it takes to traverse the pit lane here at Indy.
I'd put money on that.
Yeah, I'd put money on that as well. I also, whilst I'm thinking about it,
oh no!
Oh, that's a big hit. Oh, that's Smith. That's Luke Smith off. Down at turn 6.
Oh no.
Is that damage on the rear end? I think that car's meatballed.
Not exactly sure how much damage is on there. I saw the rear shell just completely flying through the air.
I can't see
it might have been an incident.
Car. I'm just trying to see exactly what... It's actually contact with Maxime Dumoulin. I wonder if we can get a replay up of that. Yeah, here it comes. Smith just tucked up behind that McLaren. Cuts into the chicane way too early because Dumoulin does not give up that inside line. Around Smith goes. It's damage on that car. We're not quite sure where yet. And it's a question of, does he come down pit lane for repairs or is he just going to stay out on track? It looks like he's going to stay out there for now, but he's got to be carrying a little bit of something from that. That rear wing doesn't look straight.
Yeah, taking a look, it does seem like that rear wing might have a little bit of a crook in it. That bendy carbon fiber that iRacing is known for.
Right as well. Yeah, the front right corner's dinged in a little bit as well. So maybe this is the bit of nerfing that we needed of Luke Smith to try and get a new race winner in LMP2 in Pilot Series. Luke Tennyson only 10.8 seconds behind. Is the damage to Smith's car going to be enough for Tennyson to catch up and maybe take the lead of this race?
Look at how much Luke Smith has to crank the steering wheel over just to go straight. It's practically a 20 to 30 degree angle towards the right, so that car is pulling hard to the left. And he's got to counter that with some steering input. Look at that. That is just an incredible amount of steering angle just to keep that car straight. And you got to keep in mind, this also unsettles the car tremendously through the brakes. Putting all that weight on the front end while the car is crooked like that, while it's crab walking like this, can be incredibly dangerous, but he's still incredibly quick, even with this kind of damage on the car. Look at this, on the straightaway, crooked over 25 degrees.
And we are used to seeing this here at Indianapolis, but not quite on any of the road course cars.
Look at him crab walk.
Very clearly crabbing down the start-finish straight, but we joked about how we weren't going to be seeing any oval cars out here on track today, but we have a prototype out there on track that is set up like a DeLauro IR18 right now. Someone ping Olivia Hayward. She needs to see this.
The twisted sister of LMP2 cars now on track. The number 55 of Project Valorous. I'm impressed with how smooth he's making that car look with that much damage on the car, with that much steering damage. Looks like he's practically drifting through left-hand corners, and he's just, that's fine. We'll just keep her going. I mean, he's got the gap for it as well. 10 seconds ahead of second place. And we're halfway through. Got about 40 minutes left in this race. Is it worth it, though? I feel like it might be, because that pit lane, we've been talking about it all race long. That is a very long pit lane. And if you have damage like this, look at it, he's just going sideways.
Wow. I think my concern here is how are those tires going to last? Because we know tires don't really like being ran too hard on iRacing, and with that little bit of caster just dragging that tire across the ground, well, just everywhere, putting loads of extra load in it that it really doesn't need. Are we going to see a puncture in this race? Because I've seen it happen before. I've had it happen to me before, not in an LMP2, but certainly in a race, as we have just lost the live feed for a minute. We'll cut to
we'll be right back in a bit.
And sort of try and continue on with this race. I'll give you a little rundown of the field whilst we're still going. Up at the front of the LMP2 grid right now is Luke Smith, who is 9 seconds clear of Luke Turnison in P2, just nursing that damage that we saw him get only 5 minutes ago or so. At P3 at the moment is series organizer Liam O'Sullivan for Writer Engineering, with the twin-turn sim racing driver of Renee Thalasinos in P4. P5 goes to Fury Sim Sports Matthew Luke, with Thomas Berlin only 1.2 seconds behind him, as those two are cutting their way through traffic right now. A ailing Project Valorous number 5 car piloted by Finn Adders is trying to make his way back up into position after taking an extended stop to repair some of the damage on his car. Eagle Speed Academy's Killian Clace follows 8th place twin-turn sim racing Aurora driver Sebastian Isenberg, whereas 10th is currently series debutant Alex Miller for TMR in that number 41 car. Nelson Clemente, after having a bit of an accident earlier on, is down there in P11, with Dimitri Dennis still ailing from the damage he got at the start of the race in P12. Alex Deiter is at the back of the LMP2 field right now, 20 seconds off his nearest competitor to round out the LMP2s. In GT3, Miguel Almeida still leads the way from Maxime Dumoulin by 20 seconds, with Jeremy Debova up in what should be a debut podium for the Vortex driver. Pandemonium Esports by SimLab Red, your 3rd place championship driver of Anthony Quaranta, currently down in P4, with Afonso Suto, the Sonic Racing team, down in P5. Everyone a little bit spread out on track here at the moment. The closest fights as it stands, 1.1 and less between Dimitri Dennis and Nelson Clemente for P11, with another 1.5 seconds between Eagle Speed Academy's Killian Clace and Sebastian Isenberg. But fastest personal best lap time still being set up and down the field. Your 3rd place LMP2 of Liam O'Sullivan, setting a 1:17.3 before wiping it with a 17.8.
So it seems like I'm not exactly sure what's going on, but this is a really hard crash. Like, I'm not even able to rejoin into the server again, so I'm not exactly sure what's happening. I'll see if Taylor Mills, would you be able to somehow stream your screen so I'd be able to broadcast it over?
Yeah, you better believe I'm already on it.
Yeah, we'll try and figure out a way to get the show back on the road for y'all. Unfortunately, we're not going to have any overlay statistics unless Taylor Mills is able to figure out a way to make it work.
I'll see if I can work my magic.
Still taking a bit of a moment to try and get things sorted. Apologies for the inconvenience here. Was not at all expecting this kind of issue to be occurring here today, but we work with what we got.
We may be overlay free.
Yeah, we might be overlay free. That's unfortunate scenario, but we work with what we got here, so just hold for a few moments while I try and get the display working.
So we are just following that Eagle Speed Academy driver of Killian Clace. He threads it through the final sector, trying to catch up to the rear end of Sebastian Isenberg up there in P8. Up at the front of the field, though, this is Luke Turnerton, who's managed to catch Luke Smith by a good few seconds since we last talked about him. Gap now down to 7.5. That is your ailing Project Valorous driver of Luke Smith, still up there in first place at the moment. But look at what he is dealing with in this car. Watch that steering angle as he comes onto the straight. It is not straight, to say the least. Very right hand down and dealing with that suspension damage brilliantly whilst trying to hold on to the lead of this race. Still over half an hour left to go in this projected 68 or so lap race. Big lift into turn one for Luke Smith as he tries to save a little bit of fuel. This is Rene Thalasinos, who's 7.5 seconds behind Liam O'Sullivan at the moment, just trying to close up a little bit on him to try and gain a little bit more time. But we are just monitoring a potential second pit stops for some of these drivers out here tonight as we get a little bit close to, or a little bit tight on fuel. Some guys pitting a little bit earlier than perhaps we expected them to.
All right, now we've got something rolling. At least we've got some video feedback. We've got a little bit of the audio sound as well. Probably sounds just a little bit different from what we're used to, but we've got at least something working in the background. Unfortunately, we're going to have no overlay for the rest of this race, but we'll do the best that we absolutely can. Unfortunately, iRacing said no to the broadcaster.
How rude.
Quite.
This is that fight for PA in class still. The gap has extended just a little bit between these two, up to 1.6 seconds, but the camera does swing around. You can still see Sebastian Isenberg up there in front of Killian Claes. Claes doing his absolute best to get that gap closed, and you can see that divot on the inside of turn 8 where the cars have been running and just lifting that grass up and throwing it all over the rest of the circuit. Of course, we're not in a position yet where that's really a thing that affects the grip on the racing surface in iRacing, but it is coming. It's on its way. But actually, that reminds me to finish a point that I was talking about in qualifying as Sebastian Isenberg comes down pit lane. Let's have a look and see what's going on there. Between this race and the next race, we're getting a new tyre model on these cars, and new tyre models can potentially flip sort of people's pace advantages on their head. I think Isenberg has a little bit of damage in the front of that car, so it's going to be really interesting to see where everyone starts to stack up after that LMP2 tyre model change. It's LMP2 and GTP. The GT3s aren't being touched in this update. They will be when the brand new tyre model version 10 comes at some point in the next year or so, I think. Up on the Jatsko Sebastian Isenberg as well. But yeah, keep an eye on that, because that'll be something to... Well, I mean, we'll get some experience with it as well, and we'll be able to talk to you about exactly what's changed and how the cars now feel, because iRacing are touting it as a very, very big change, and it's safe to say I am more than a little bit excited.
Absolutely. I did read a little bit of that blog post when they were talking about some of the changes they were making, and the way that they described leaning on the tires. That is by far the most important thing to me in a sim racing game, is being able to lean on those tires, being able to really sense the level of grip that you have, and being able, not necessarily to go overboard, but certainly being able to abuse those tires a little bit more. Leaning on them, essentially, is what I like to say. And their description of it seems to be that you're not going to be able to drift the car around the corners quite like you could in ACC, but you certainly will be able to lean on it a little bit more, get a little bit more slip angle in the car, rather than trying to keep them pointed absolutely straight and, generally making the cars feel understeery. So having a little more slip angle is going to be a welcome change to some of these cars. Others, that's not going to be ideal, of course. LMP2, very sensitive to aerodynamics, so it'll still be a little bit snappy over the limit. But I'll be really excited to see how those tires change, how other cars handle, like the GR86 or even the GT4s or 3s.
Well, that's not going to be for a while, to be fair, because this tyre model is specifically for the two main prototype classes. In iRacing. That's what it's being touted as, because the community, the prototype community has been complaining about the time models and the cars a little bit for a while, because neither of them are really at a point where we call their pace realistic. I think the GTPs, the LMDHs, are about, they're a good few, at least a few seconds a lap quicker at Le Mans than they should be. So we're hoping that maybe with the changes, it'll bring them more into line with their real pace, as we're just following Thomas Berlin, who's coming under tons of pressure from a recovering Finn Anders, pulling to the inside of turn 7, goes down the inside on the brakes, just about manages to get it stopped. Almost a slide job on the driver of the 008 as the Project Valorous driver of Finn Anders recovers to P6 and now has 8 seconds to close in on Fury Sim Sports Matthew Luke. Matthew Luke, who we've seen make a couple of mistakes so far this race. Thomas Berlin looking to come back at Finn Anders. He's going to have a look down into turn 14. He's going to get it, turn 12. He is going to get it stopped, but Anders will keep his nose in through 13. They're going to be side by side through the final corner on the track. Anders just losing ground on that longer outside line compared to Berlin, but drops back into the slipstream, straight to the inside of that bright red P217. It's going to be another outbraking job on the brakes. Berlin switches back to the inside, and they're going to be side by side once again into one, with Berlin on the advantageous line this time. Anders managed to get clear enough of the 008 that Thomas Berlin was able to move back to the right and resend the move on the driver of the number 5 car. So now, from half a second back, Finn Anders is going to have to do that work all over again.
And that was an incredibly intelligent move from Thomas Berling in that 008. Almost choosing and preferring Finn Anders to be on the defense. Heading into that corner, I would not be surprised if Thomas Berling actually let off to give Finn Anders that advantage at the beginning. Nope. Oh, a little bit of a lift. Lets him by just a little bit and then starts attacking on the inside, and a fantastic move. Takes that position away, and Finn Anders just driving a little bit too deep into the corner, trying to get some level of speed through the turn 1, turn 2 chicane, and not able to keep up, so now going to have to make up all that ground, and Thomas Berling with a fantastic defense from the Project Valorous number 5.
So GT3 pit stop cycle has started to just crop up as that's Finn Anders to the inside of Thomas Berling. Isn't going to let himself get jumped in the same way he did last time, but can't take advantage on the inside of 1, but is going to get a run around the outside of 2, take the inside 4-3, and theoretically that should be the position made now. A great lunge from, from Finn Anders to go down the inside of Thomas Berlin and make that move stick, but it looks like we've had a bit of an off for Luke Smith. Let's have a look and see if we can get a look at that. It's going to be down into turn 12. Goes, ooh, just trying to see when this happens. Oh, touched the grass on the inside of 13, and I think probably picked up an off track there. As actually, twin turn sim racing car of Sebastian Isenberg is apparently driving slowly. Ooh, has a spin down at 7. In fact, no, doesn't have a spin. Manages to save that one and get it back on the track without actually impeding anyone. So great job for keeping that one on the straight and narrow. But back at the front of the field, as I jump cuttingly make my way through the LMP2 field, the gap between Luke Tennyson and Luke Smith, how did I not realize they're both called Luke, has actually closed to within 3 seconds. There are 25 minutes left in this race, and if Smith wants to hold on to that lead, he's got a lot of work to do. Do we have world feedback? We don't have world feedback.
World feedback?
I thought we had the world feedback for a second.
What?
But it's just you broadcasting my replay.
I'm not exactly sure what.
Are we having any progress with the technical difficulties?
No, we're not going to. It won't let me back in. I tried everything, like short of like rebooting my computer, but that means the stream's gonna have to go down, and like we're so close to the end of the race that it's kind of pointless.
We can't do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dimitri Dennis then coming down pit lane for his final stop of the race. I did say there'd be a couple of drivers who are a little bit short, and it is the guys who stopped really early to take those damage repairs. We're just looking at Dimitri Dennis and Finn Adders right there, who can't get to the end of this race on that one stop. There's a couple more drivers that we're keeping our eye on as well for that one, who are a little bit further into their stint than other drivers in the field at the moment, including Liam O'Sullivan, who's only done 14 laps, whereas the likes of Thomas Berlin have done 18. So Berlin, who was fighting off Adders, is now very much in clean air for what should be the remainder of this race.
So meanwhile, taking a look at the 396, the unlucky Luke racing Luke Turnison. Turnison? I think it's Turnison. Might
Turnison.
be. Yeah, got you. Gotta say it like a Brit. Heading into turn 1 and now turn 2, chasing down, I believe that is Luke Smith ahead.
Luke Smith is the race leader, yeah. 1.5 seconds is the gap.
So that means Luke still hasn't taken a pit stop since we saw that car crab walking, still crab walking through the straightaway. And that's just pure perseverance. But at this point, you gotta wonder, like, how many positions is he going to be dropping off as a result of this?
Oh, it's minutes of repairs otherwise. This is the smartest decision you can make as long as you can keep it on the road.
So it's going to be an interesting proposition to see him try and defend with a wounded car. He has the kind of skill capacity that I feel like he could probably put up a mean defense, even with the car as wounded as it is, practically going sideways down the straightaways like a twisted sister from the Gen 4 NASCARs as they're going through the final corner and onto turn 1 of the oval.
I was going to say, that is your sort of thing, a bit of an ovaler, isn't it?
I don't necessarily consider myself an ovaler as much as I just like taking stock cars onto road courses, but
you do like doing that.
I do like doing that.
I don't know why.
I do appreciate myself some roundy rounds.
Yeah, I do enjoy a bit of oval now and again. Me and one of my teammates had a go at Michigan in the IndyCar the other week. Yeah, we 1-2'd it.
Nice.
It was great. I love Michigan. I actually think I like it more than I like Indy. Is that illegal to say? Am I not allowed to say that?
Michigan. So you're talking about Detroit Belle Isle?
No. Michigan Speedway, the big one, the big concrete one.
Okay. I got you mixed up.
I got best oval on the IndyCar calendar. Easy.
It's certainly an opinion.
Yeah, it just races so much better, I think.
I don't know. I'm partial to
draft packs.
I'm partial to Indy because ABN a couple of years ago it actually had a Gen 4 series going on that I raced in, and I had a lot of fun racing at Indy with those Gen 4s. Just how sideways they could get. It was a lot of fun.
Hold on a second. This could be the pass for the league. Tennyson's had a much better run out of the final corner than Luke Smith. Smith still struggling with that suspension damage. To the inside goes Turnison. It's going to be a relatively easy move on the brakes as Smith doesn't really fight it. The suspension damage not really giving him anything to fight with, as for only the second time on track out of pit cycle this season, Luke Smith will not lead a lap. That is, if you want to demonstrate just how dominant that Project Valorous 55 car has been all season, it has been here and the Nürburgring where he hasn't led a lap based on anything other than pit cycle.
That is incredible. Luke Smith.
What a stat.
Just still showing that dominance, even in defeat. That car's still crab walking, and it was a very smart decision from Luke Smith not to battle it too hard, actually, showing that experience. I'm the kind of fool who would have assumed someone of his skill level would have recognized that he has the skill to try and defend, but Luke Smith is much smarter than I, and decides, you know what, my car is too wounded. I can't really fight too aggressively on this. I'll just let Luke by. And it makes sense as well, because he doesn't want to ruin anybody else's race. He's already got the championship clinched up. He's got no reason to battle, really. So, very intelligent, cooler head on Luke Smith. Certainly a a lot smarter than my dorky little brain. I just want to see chaos. You know, that's my monkey brain. I'd be a type of way.
Chaos. I mean, Luke Smith's just going to the right of a GT3 down there. It was almost a little bit chaotic, but I think that's about as chaotic as we're going to see for the next 18 minutes or so in this race. As Finad is still down there on pit lane, actually, that's a very extended stop for the number 5 Project Valorous car, who is now well within the LMP2s in terms of position. On board then with Alex Miller, just sitting on that roll bar as he tries to close the gap to Killian Clace. Not doing a great job of it so far, struggling to... No, actually, that's a lie. 17.1 last lap, or best lap, compared to a 17.4 for Killian Clace, and an 18.4 for... a 19.4 even for Clace, compared to a 18.7 last lap for Miller. So this is a gap that could close up as we get towards the end of this race. Of course, a ABN Champ Car driver, you'll have seen him on the broadcasts. I'll say a couple of points. Quite a lot in Season 6 of Champ Car. Second place in the drivers and teams champion as well. Him and Lilacs here. Dominant towards the end of that championship. Renee Thalassinos down here in P4, 9 seconds off the back of Liam O'Sullivan, who still sits very comfortably in P3. Not really much. Well, saying that, Liam O'Sullivan is actually pulling away from Renee Thalassinos at the moment. So Thalassinos just really trying to hold on to that P5 as we come towards the closing stages of this race. 4.5 seconds clear of Matthew Luke, who is closing that gap by about, well, as of last lap, 1.4 seconds. So definitely something we'll keep an eye on as we get into the last 15 minutes of this one.
Unfortunately, if you're just joining us, welcome to the eGP Pilot Series. Doesn't usually look like this. We had some technical difficulties and unfortunately lost all of our overlays, and I can't reconnect to the server, so unfortunately we don't have the view either. But at this current moment, we are at the eGP of Indianapolis here in the Indy Road Course with LMP2s and GT3s. Luke Smith was... who is already the season champion, got wounded earlier in this race and is now in second place, I believe, behind Luke Tennyson. And I believe Miguel Almeida should still be in the lead from the GT3s. But if you are still watching, thanks for tuning in and staying tuned in despite the technical difficulties. We really appreciate our viewership here, and it's through viewers like you that we are able to continue these broadcasts even in dire situations like this. So thank you very much for watching. Meanwhile, as we're taking a look through, we see the number 23 of, I believe, Dimitri Dennis trying to catch up to Nelson Clemente up ahead.
Sorry, I'm actually trying to sort out some sort of overlays for us here. I'm doing what I can.
If you can't get it set up, it's fine. I'm not exactly sure how I'd be able to implement it because you got a widescreen, so I can't even fit the iRacing watermark in the bottom right.
Oh, don't worry. I've got this. I've got a plan now. And once I get a plan, I can actually do things. So this is fine. And wait for it. There is one thing I need to try and fix. Oh no, I just realized exactly what I've done there. Listen, I'm sure you can do some cropping, but theoretically, if I do this, come on. It's not working. Hold on. The feed will be back in a second. We're going to make this work. We should have some information.
Hey, there we go. That'll work.
But it is difficult to read. I'm trying to get it lined up on your screen. There we go. We got something. We can keep track of this race.
You can push it to the left a little bit.
I will try to. I'm sorry that this has come to this. It's been a tricky last 20 minutes or so of this race as we sort of lost the broadcast feed a little bit. So we're just trying to come up with a solution to make sure we can still track this race properly.
Appreciate everybody managing through our technical difficulties. Unfortunately, we won't be able to get the overlay back, but we do have something in the meantime. Meanwhile, taking a look, Project Valorous number 55, that's Luke Smith, 11 positions gained. A huge gain from Luke Smith. Started at the back, because as mentioned before, he is the champion. Just kind of wanted a bit of a challenge, but unfortunately the challenge being a bit too much for him, getting some damage, and now falling back into second after managing to get to first before 20 minutes had even been reached in the race. Luke Tennyson, though, showed a fantastic outing here in qualifying, getting pole position. Luke Smith deciding not to qualify, and now controls the race from the lead in the number 23. That'll work. That's good.
We got something.
We got something.
That's all that matters. Oh, goodness me. See, this is why I just do the commentary, not the broadcasting. 4 seconds then is the gap at the front of the LMP2 field. Now Luke Tennyson leading the way, as mentioned, after that pole position, and has really held on to the position since Luke Smith picked up that damage. You can have a look here at exactly what Luke Smith is dealing with if we jump on board with the 55 once again, as he just cycles his way through that GT3 traffic, touches that curb on the inside and the curb on the inside of the next one. You can see still how much faster these cars are mid-corner compared to the LMP, compared to the GT3s, even when they're carrying a little bit of damage. Race cards go zoom.
To be very clear, on those left-handers, on those left-hand corners, he's not counter-steering. He's just, that's just where the wheel needs to go to keep it straight. As an LMP2 dives into the pit lane.
Yeah, that's Matthew Luke. So we're talking about how Liam O'Sullivan and Matthew Luke could be getting a little bit close towards the end of this one. That won't be the case. In fact, no, it was Renee Thalasinos who was getting caught by Matthew Luke, but that won't be happening anymore. As Matthew Luke comes down pit lane for another pit stop, just following Killian Clace there, who's just overtaken Matt Luke, who actually repaired a little bit of damage there. You saw that carbon fiber just pop back into position, as I think he's actually going to retire the car on this occasion. So Matthew Luke will not see the rest of this race out, as we're still following that battle between Clemente and Isenberg. Isenberg's closed up massively in the last lap or so and is about to get back onto that long start-finish straight and should be able to have a dive down into turn one. So through 14 they go. Isenberg right in the slipstream of Clemente. Clemente punching a hole in the air for Isenberg's car to just slot into and reach those slightly higher top speeds. He's going to have a peak to the inside down at one. He's actually going to half go for it but doesn't quite commit to it. I think Isenberg's still dealing with a little bit of damage on the front end of that car and doesn't quite have the confidence in getting that P217 stopped. And Clemente will survive for another day.
Once again, we apologize to the audience here. Have a bit of technical difficulties. We have a little bit of a different setup for our overlays this time around. But from what I'm hearing, this is actually a pretty common issue among broadcasters. It's been happening a lot more recently, unfortunately. So it's just kind of one of those situations where technology decides to be unkind to our wishes. But right now, as we take a look at Miguel Almeida in the Sonic Racing Team green car, he's been having a much better luck this this series and particularly this race than I've had with the broadcasting situation. Currently sitting in first, has been sitting in first the whole race, and as we mentioned beginning of this race, that championship battle in GT3 was closing up pretty significantly. Miguel having some fantastic success in the early portions of the season, but the past two races at Hockenheim, and I believe it was also, it wasn't Mosport was the last one, it was Mugello, having some bad luck and dropping quite far down the order. The order of business today, though, was just stay consistent. You don't got to be super fast. He's already got the pace. He just needs to be consistent and keep the car on track, and that's what he's been doing. And he's been having a tremendous amount of success so far, sitting in first place pretty much the entire race.
Yeah, back to this fight between Clemente and Isenberg then. Isenberg just got within a few tenths of Clemente in that middle sector, but missed the apex of 10. But Clemente is going to return the favor down at turn 13 as they come back onto the start-finish straight. I don't think the opportunity is going to be this time by, but it's certainly something we're keeping a very close eye on as we get underneath. Wow, 7 minutes to go in this race. I feel like the last 12 minutes or so is absolutely flown. Is this how fast races go when you're clicking buttons the entire time?
Oh yeah, they're over before you even know it.
Commentator just holding on for the moment once again, getting a good run through the first sector to extend that gap up to about half a second from Sebastian Isenberg. Isenberg doing everything he can to get back into position, back up into the top 8 of this race, but these two have been going at it absolutely all race long, not exactly having the best of luck for either driver at any point in this one, and just sort of dealing with it as they have done so far and fighting for the scraps and fighting for whatever they've got left. Almost a rare lockup, I think, for Isenberg down into the final corner there, just about manages to hold on to it and continue that chase on Clemente.
The number 42, I believe it is, and the number 32.
It's the fight of the twos.
The twos. The terrible twos. Although these two drivers certainly not terrible. They both definitely have more talent in their pinky finger than I have in my whole body.
I mean, is there such thing as talent, or is it just practice?
Well, yeah, that's what I would consider talent. Talent is something that, like, I don't think talent is really innate. A lot of people seem to think so, but, like, you know, it's often you don't see the practice that goes into a lot of these series, a lot of these events. Yeah. Like, Luke Smith is able to take his crab-walked car and might realistically be able to finish in second place with a car that should be junked. So, like, that takes a lot of practice, a lot of skill, and a lot of knowledge about the car in order to be able to accomplish that kind of goal. And that's talent. That is talent that has been allowed to flourish through practice. So, but that's just my perspective on things.
So we just saw Thomas Berling coming down pit lane for a quick splash and dash. We're not sure if anyone else needs to at this stage in the race. We're just keeping an eye on this battle for P8 in class between a damaged Sebastian Isenberg. You can see that front end a little bit flatter than it should be and dinged in at either side. So he's doing a great job to get any sort of speed out of that car, but it's been really limited by the damage to the aerodynamics on that machine as Commentator just dealing with a little bit of GT3 traffic through this first sector. Almost runs into the back of Jeremy Dabova. Isenberg has to slam on the brakes, and that may be the move that breaks up this fight as we come down underneath 3.5 minutes to go.
Yeah, just 3.5 minutes. It's about 3 or 4 laps, maybe. And that was a tremendous situation, very well held by both Isenberg and Nelson Clemente to avoid running into Jeremy Dabova there. Very quick reactions, not only from Nelson Clemente, but also from Isenberg, because there's not a whole lot of time to react to the car ahead of you braking like that, and a fantastic job. And now is still on the back end at least, but loses the back end on the grass a little bit as Isenberg, and is not going to quite have the run he wants, but that draft is going to help him catch back up anyways. Heading on to the start-finish straight and heading into turn 1 with less than 3 minutes to go.
Yeah, so coming down to the final couple of laps now, Luke Turnerton still comfortably in the lead of this race after Luke Smith picked up damage after the first round of pit stops for the LMP2s and has been trying to recover what he can from this race since down there in P2, and not too far ahead of Liam O'Sullivan in third. Only 6.5 seconds covers those two at the moment. There's a little bit of a scrap going on between Killian Claes and Rene Thalasinos. I think just a touch of racing overtaking down into turn 1 there. We'll see if we can get a replay of that one to see what happened. No, so it was just goodness me, I think it was Rene Thalasinos coming off pit lane. So you've just seen the replay on board from Thalasinos' perspective there. As I'm waiting for Killian Claes to go through, I don't think it quite happened there, but still, there's another position decided for what I believe is P4 in class. Yeah, Killian Claes just 1.5 seconds behind, but back to that fight between Isenberg and Clemente. It is as close as it has been with just over a minute left on the clock. They're only going to get 2 more laps out of this race, as here is Luke Turnerton coming across the line to take the white flag. We are 1 to go as he separates the fight between Killian Claes and Rene Thalasinos. So I think that fight may be a little bit dead. As here's Isenberg having a look down into turn 7. He knows he's only got a couple more opportunities to make this one happen as they come through that chicane section in the middle sector once again, cutting that apex beautifully on the inside for Clemente. He's going to get a great run out of turn 10 through 11, back onto the banking before coming down into turn 12. The gap just under 0.4 of a second. That might be close enough to make a move work down into turn 1. Let's try and stick with this if we can. We are very close to Turnerton coming across the start finish line to end this race. These two being shown the white flag now as they go past your second place GT3 of Maxime Dumoulin. Is he going to have a look? He's going to have a look, but I don't think he's going to make anything happen yet, as here's Luke Turnerton through turn 14. And with 1 more race left after this one, we finally have a brand new race winner in LMP2. It is Luke Turnerton who takes the win here in Indianapolis. The fight for P8 just extending over what is probably a reasonable window for an overtake to happen within just outside 0.3 of a second. Both cars go deep into 7, and I think that's that one going to be over for Sebastian Isenberg. As here then, from pole to flag, it has been a return to dominant performance for Miguel Almeida as he wins here in Indianapolis. Just watching the final moments of this fight for P8 then, just following Isenberg going for a big slide through 13, trying to carry as much speed as he can. He's not going to be able to do it. That damage really limiting how close he was going to get to taking that position from Nelson Commentator. Commentator will bring it home 8th, and Sebastian Isenberg will bring it home in P9. Donuts for Miguel Almeida there, just coming off the back of sending that McLaren 720 SGT3 Evo for a spin. And he deserves it. After the couple of weeks that he's had, he really deserves a result like that.
All right, and with that, we'll head straight into the driver interviews. Luke Tennyson actually a little bit busy, a little crunched for time, so we're going to try and get Luke into the commentary booth for an interview with Taylor Mills before he has to go to work. So Taylor Mills, why don't you take this from here?
Luke Tennyson, I really hope I'm pronouncing that correctly now. Welcome to the ABM broadcast. I'd say it's probably as close as an ignorant Brit is going to get. But congratulations.
10 out of 10.
Thank you. And well, same to you. Congratulations on a pole position and the first unique winner in LMP2 this season. Of course, it comes off the back of late race damage for Luke Smith, but it's still got to feel special.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw the gap coming down, it was like, oh, it might actually still happen. But like, it's just for Luke, of course, but that will happen sometime this season. Bit of luck.
Which is ironic, considering your team is called Unlucky Luke Rayton, that finally a little bit of it came your way. But yeah, just take us through that one in detail. Like, did you know that Luke had crashed, or did you just see that gap start to come down and didn't really know what happened until you got there?
Yeah, no, I exited the pits and it was like, gap was like 10 seconds or something. I was like, okay, I'm just going to keep on going how I was going. And then it was like 9 seconds, 8 seconds, 7 seconds. And eventually I was getting away like a second a lap or something. And I was like, ooh, there we go.
And then, of course, the move finally came down into turn 1 with, I think we were well over 20 minutes to go at that point. And then you pretty much cruised to victory from there.
Yeah, it was surprising how well it went, because like my first stint, I already got like the tire warning with like 15 laps to go or something, while on the last stint I literally got on a white flag lap. So something happened there on the last stint that I don't understand myself either.
Well, I think that brings me nicely onto the last question I have for you. We're going to have a tire model change between this race and the next race that should theoretically shift how the LMP2s handle. It's not going to be too long after the update that we have our final race of the season. So what are you going to do to prepare for that change?
I mean, I don't think I'm going to do it much different from normally, aside from just hoping that the tire model isn't too fucked up. Because I quite like the current one.
Well, Congratulations then on your win and your pole. And again, the first unique winner here in the LMP2 class of the eGP Pilot Series. If you have anyone you want to thank, shout out, now's your time to do it.
I mean, I can't thank Luke, but I don't think that's the nicest thing to do. I don't know. I'll thank my whole team for the companionship they bring.
That's actually really sweet. Well, thank you very much for your time, Luke. Hopefully we'll see you in 2 weeks' time for the final round of the championship.
Yep. See you guys.
So then that was Luke Tennyson, your class winner in LMP2. Let's bring Miguel Almeida in, and I think Amity's going to have a little bit of a chat to him about his race.
So Miguel Almeida, our GT3 winner, once again back to original form earlier on in the series. How are you feeling after this win?
Pretty tired. It got a pretty bit feisty here with the LMP2s, but it ended up well, for me at least.
Absolutely, a fantastic showing from you. You'd faltered a little bit at Mugello and Hockenheim, but once again back into original form. Indy is one of those difficult tracks. We've been talking about it with the multi-class racing, but you seem to handle it very well, keep the car straight. We're heading into this race. Was there a different change in mindset in order to try and get you back on top?
Yeah, it was kind of weird because I hate this track and I was not really looking forward to it. Yeah, I know. But I knew that it was just a matter of not getting killed either by LMP2s or GT3s. It's pretty hard to overtake here safely. So yeah, I just wanted to stay alive after first lap and just manage. I couldn't really save anyways, but yeah, it feels bad for Maxime. I felt that we could have had a race up ahead, but yeah, I mean, sad for him, happy for me. It's how it goes.
And in 2 weeks' time, we're heading to the final race of the season at Sebring, another American track. That one even bumpier and much more strange a track in terms of the previous selection of tracks for this series. So how are you feeling about Sebring in 2 weeks?
Yeah, I really like it, but I'm afraid that once I said this, it will end up badly. So, but it's one of my favorite tracks for sure. So I hope it's a strong result there as well.
Awesome. And finally, if you have anybody to thank, anybody to wish well, head it off. You got anybody to thank?
Yeah, just the team again, and yeah, that's it.
All right, that's Miguel Almeida, our GT3 winner, and possibly might need some additional confirmation, but according to Liam O'Sullivan, I'm getting in the chat here, you might have just clinched the GT championship just now. So congratulations to you on that. Again, unconfirmed, I don't know for sure, but that seems quite likely, so congratulations to you.
Thank you. I mean, if you said it, it must be true. So.
Well, I certainly hope it's true. You've been quite dominant in the early portions of the season.
Well, before we do let you go, we've got to talk about that one. 1 round to go in the championship, and it doesn't matter where you finish in 2 weeks. After that dominant start to the championship, and even after faltering for the last couple of weeks, it was enough with, I think, your closest competition not turning up tonight to take the championship. So how does that one feel?
I mean, bittersweet for sure. I was hoping for a tight fight at the end, at least for Sebring, because as I said, I really like it. But I mean, if I can go into Sebring a little bit lighter in the shoulders, I mean, even better. I can just relax and have a bit of fun there. So yeah, it feels pretty good.
So a pressure-free, light shoulder Miguel Almeida clinching the championship here at Indianapolis 2 weeks early, technically, 1 event early. Congratulations, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. You as well.
Congratulations, Miguel.
Thank you.
So certainly a chaotic race on our side. Very much a race at the Indianapolis road course. On their side, we now have both championships decided, and that means it is going to be gloves off in the final race of the season. There is nothing on the line except for bragging rights, so everyone will be pushing as hard as they can. Of course, we're still going to have a couple of championship positions to be decided when we get down to Florida, but surely, Amity, that is a weight off the shoulders of a lot of people who now get to go out there and just race.
Absolutely. We saw how Luke Smith was driving quite a lot differently this race after clinching last week at Hockenheim, trying a last to first challenge and almost being successful, if not for the damage that he received 20 minutes before the end of the race, or 30 minutes or so. And we could see Miguel Almeida. I wonder if he's going to try something like that, like Luke Smith did, or if he's going to continue dominating in the as he had earlier in the season. So it'll be interesting to see what Miguel Almeida chooses as his strategy for dealing with having clinched that championship. But as you did mention, the other drivers, they've still got championship points to accumulate and still got championship positions to make up. So it's not necessarily a week off for the 2 weeks time at Sebring. Sebring is going to be, as you mentioned, gloves off for all the other competitors who are going to be in there trying to get bragging rights to try and get an event win. And Miguel Almeida in the GT3 class, he's shown weakness before. It's possible that people could be trying to really charge hard against an eased up Miguel Almeida to try and take that win home.
And what a track it's going to be to round out the championship. The legendary Sebring International Raceway. Going to have a lot to say about that one in the intro. But for now, it is going to be farewell from Indianapolis. Farewell from the penultimate round of the eGP Pilot Series. Farewell from Amity. Farewell from myself, Taylor Mills. Thank you very much for watching us here on ABN. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time for the championship finale with a brand new tyre model on the LMP2. So we'll see how that goes. But for now, we'll see you then. Stay safe, stay hydrated. Sarah.